Hello, and welcome to our channel, Stories with Silas. We hope you enjoy watching.
The sheikh's confidential donor data was hemorrhaging onto a spy's laptop down the hall, and Maya Chen, the waitress nobody noticed, was the only person in the room who knew how to stop it. 3 minutes was all she had before thousands of lives and millions of dollars disappeared forever. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The conference room on the 42nd floor of the Grandview Hotel in Manhattan gleamed with understated luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, while polished mahogany furniture and cream-colored leather chairs spoke of power and prestige. This was where deals worth millions were forged, where the world's elite gathered to shape the future. But Maya Chen never imagined she would become part of that world again, especially not while balancing a tray of coffee cups and Danish pastries. At 28 years old, Maya had learned that life rarely followed the script you wrote for yourself. Just 2 years ago, she had been a rising star in the IT department at TechCore Solutions, a mid-sized cybersecurity firm in Brooklyn. Fresh out of MIT with a degree in computer science and a minor in network security, she'd been on track to become one of the youngest senior analysts in the company's history. Her colleagues called her the Bloodhound because of her uncanny ability to trace digital footprints and identify security breaches before they became catastrophic. Then her mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the doctor said, with a grim shake of their heads. Maya's father had passed away when she was 16, leaving just the two of them. The choice was simple, even if it was heartbreaking. She left TechCore to become her mother's full-time caregiver, watching her savings evaporate as medical bills piled up faster than insurance could cover them. Her mother fought for 18 months before losing the battle, leaving Maya alone with a mountain of debt and a resume gap that made potential employers nervous. The tech industry moved fast. 18 months away might as well have been 18 years. Every interview ended the same way, with polite smiles and promises to keep your resume on file. Maya needed income immediately, so she took a job at the Grandview Hotel as a banquet server. The pay was modest, but the tips from high-profile events could be substantial, and at least it kept her apartment and her mother's medical creditors at bay. She arrived at the hotel each morning at 6, put on her crisp black vest and white shirt, and transformed herself into the invisible help that wealthy guests barely noticed. Most days, she served coffee and cleared plates, maintaining the pleasant but forgettable demeanor that the job required. She'd memorized the hotel's layout, learned which guests tipped well, and mastered the art of being present without being intrusive. This particular morning, Maya had been assigned to the executive conference suite, a prestigious booking that meant serious money was changing hands. The hotel manager, Gerald Patterson, a fastidious man in his 50s who treated the hotel like his personal kingdom, had briefed the staff personally. "We have a VIP from the Middle East," he'd said, his voice low and serious. "Sheikh Khalid Rahman, a major philanthropist and businessman. This meeting is extremely important. Absolute discretion, impeccable service, no mistakes." Maya had nodded along with the other servers, noting the tension in Gerald's voice. She'd served plenty of wealthy guests before, corporate executives, celebrities traveling incognito, even a former president once. But something about this particular booking felt different. Gerald's nervousness was palpable, and that made everyone else nervous too. As she pushed her cart toward the conference room, Maya caught her reflection in one of the hallway's ornate mirrors. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite the concealer she'd carefully applied that morning. Her black hair was pulled back in the regulation bun, and her uniform was immaculate. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was wearing a costume, playing a role in someone else's story. 2 years ago, she would have been attending meetings like this as a consultant, not serving coffee during them. She paused outside the conference room door, took a deep breath, and reminded herself of what her mother used to say during those final, painful months. "Maya, baby, sometimes we have to take the long way around to get where we're going. Don't mistake a detour for a dead end." At the time, Maya had thought her mother was talking about the cancer. Now she wondered if she'd been talking about life itself. Maya knocked twice, soft but audible, and pushed open the door. She had no idea that the next 3 minutes would change everything. The conference room was already occupied when Maya entered. 4 men sat around the gleaming mahogany table, their attention focused on a series of documents spread before them. The air carried the scent of expensive cologne and the subtle hum of importance that always seemed to accompany people accustomed to power. At the head of the table sat Sheikh Khalid Rahman, and Maya understood immediately why Gerald had been so nervous. The sheikh was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. His presence commanded attention without demanding it, the kind of natural authority that came from generations of leadership. His dark eyes were sharp and intelligent, scanning the documents before him with intense focus. Unlike the stereotypical image of Middle Eastern royalty draped in traditional robes, Sheikh Rahman looked like he could have stepped out of a Wall Street boardroom, though the subtle embroidery on his collar hinted at his heritage. To his right sat his personal assistant, a lean man in his 30s named Omar, who seemed to anticipate the sheikh's needs before they were spoken. Omar's fingers flew across a tablet, taking notes while simultaneously managing what appeared to be a dozen different conversations via email. Next to him was David Brennan, a silver-haired attorney from one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. His reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed a contract, and at the far end sat Marcus Chen, a financial advisor whose reputation for managing high-net-worth portfolios was legendary in certain circles. "Good morning, gentlemen," Maya said softly, her voice trained to be pleasant but unobtrusive. "I have your coffee and refreshments. May I serve you?" Sheikh Rahman glanced up briefly and nodded with a polite smile. "Thank you, yes, please." His English was flawless, carrying just the slightest accent that added a musical quality to his words. Unlike many wealthy clients Maya had served, he actually made eye contact and acknowledged her presence, a small gesture that somehow made her feel less invisible. Maya moved efficiently around the table, placing coffee cups before each man. She'd memorized their preferences from the order sheet. The sheikh took his black, no sugar. Omar preferred a cappuccino with 1 sugar. The attorney wanted green tea instead of coffee, and Marcus took his with cream and artificial sweetener. These details mattered. In the service industry, remembering preferences was the difference between adequate service and excellence meant better tips. As she poured, she couldn't help but overhear fragments of their conversation. Years of working in tech had trained her to absorb information almost unconsciously, and old habits died hard. "The hospital project in Yemen is ready to move forward," Sheikh Rahman was saying, his finger tracing a line on what appeared to be an architectural blueprint. "We've secured the land, negotiated with local authorities, and have commitments from 3 international medical organizations to staff the facility once it's operational." David Brennan nodded, making a notation on his legal pad. "The donor agreements are all in order, Sheikh Rahman. We have commitments totaling $43 million from various foundations and private contributors. The wire transfers will be initiated once all parties sign the final documentation." Maya set down the coffee pot and began arranging the Danish pastries on small plates. $43 million. The number echoed in her head. She was serving coffee to men who casually discussed the kind of money that could change thousands of lives. It wasn't resentment she felt exactly, more a kind of surreal disconnect between their world and hers. "The second facility in Syria is more complicated," Marcus interjected, pulling up a spreadsheet on his laptop. "The political situation there requires additional security measures and insurance." I've been coordinating with the State Department and several NGOs to ensure safe passage for construction materials and personnel." Sheikh Rahman leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers thoughtfully. "This project means everything to me," he said, and Maya heard genuine emotion in his voice. "My mother was born in a village outside Damascus. She used to tell me stories about women dying in childbirth because the nearest hospital was 2 days' travel away. I watched my grandfather suffer his final heart attack with no medical care available. These hospitals will save lives. They will give people hope." Omar looked up from his tablet, concern flickering across his face. "Sheikh, I'm getting an unusual notification from our security software. It says there's been an attempt to access our network." The sheikh waved his hand dismissively. "We're in a hotel, Omar. There are probably 50 different devices trying to connect to the Wi-Fi. Our network has multiple layers of security. It's nothing to worry about." Maya finished arranging the pastries and stepped back toward her cart, preparing to leave them to their business. But something Omar had said triggered an instinct she'd thought was long dormant. An attempted network access during a meeting involving $43 million in wire transfers. Her old training whispered warnings in the back of her mind. She glanced at the sheikh's laptop, sitting open on the table in front of him. The screen displayed what looked like a secure document portal, probably containing sensitive financial information and donor details. In the wrong hands, that data could be devastating. Identity theft, financial fraud, even blackmail, the possibilities were endless. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" Maya asked, maintaining her professional demeanor, even as her mind began working through the implications of what she'd just heard. "No, thank you," Sheikh Rahman replied absently, his attention already back on the documents. Maya nodded and began pushing her cart toward the door. She should leave. She should mind her own business and let these powerful men handle their own affairs. They had security software, attorneys, and undoubtedly IT consultants on call. But as her hand touched the door handle, she heard Omar's voice again, sharper this time, laced with genuine alarm. "Sheikh Rahman, we have a problem, a serious problem." Maya froze with her hand on the door handle. Every instinct told her to turn around, but professionalism and self-preservation warred inside her. This wasn't her world anymore. She was the help, invisible and inconsequential. Whatever was happening wasn't her concern. But then she heard the panic in Omar's voice escalate. "Sheikh, someone is actively accessing our system right now. The security software is showing multiple breach attempts, and they're getting through. I'm seeing files being copied. Financial records, donor information, everything." The color drained from Sheikh Rahman's face. He leaned forward, staring at his laptop screen with mounting horror. "How is this possible?" "We have military-grade encryption. Show me." Maya turned slowly, abandoning her cart by the door. Her legs carried her back toward the table before her brain could authorize the movement. Years of training overrode common sense. She'd spent countless hours learning to identify and respond to exactly this kind of situation. Watching it unfold without acting felt physically painful, like seeing someone drowning and not jumping in to help. David Brennan removed his reading glasses, his legal mind already calculating liability. If donor information is compromised, we're looking at lawsuits, criminal investigations, and the complete collapse of this project. Some of these contributors insisted on anonymity. If their identities are exposed, especially those from politically sensitive regions. "I know what it means," Sheikh Rahman snapped, his composure cracking for the first time. His fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to shut down the breach, but the laptop seemed to have taken on a life of its own. Windows popped up and closed without his input. Files flashed across the screen, downloading to some unknown location. "Omar, call our IT security team in Dubai. Get them on the phone now." "They're 9 hours ahead, Sheikh. It's 11 at night there." I'm trying to reach the emergency line, but then call our backup team in London. Call someone. The sheikh's voice rose, stress fracturing his careful diplomatic tone. He grabbed his phone, scrolled through contacts with shaking hands, trying to find someone, anyone, who could stop the digital hemorrhaging of his life's work. Marcus Chen pushed back from the table, his face pale. Sheikh Rahman, if this breach includes the wire transfer protocols, someone could redirect the funds. $43 million could vanish before we even realize it's gone. We need to call the banks immediately and freeze everything. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Omar was on his phone, speaking rapid Arabic interspersed with English technical terms. David Brennan had his phone pressed to his ear, presumably calling the law firm's crisis management team. Marcus was typing furiously on his laptop, trying to reach financial institutions across multiple time zones, and Sheikh Rahman sat frozen before his laptop, watching years of humanitarian work evaporate into the digital ether. Maya stood just inside the doorway, forgotten in the panic. She watched the laptop screen from across the room, her trained eyes tracking the pattern of the breach. It was sophisticated, certainly, but not as sophisticated as the attackers probably thought. She could see the signature of the intrusion, the way it moved through the system. Whoever was doing this was good, but they'd made mistakes. Small ones, but mistakes nonetheless. The breach was happening in real time, which meant the attacker was nearby. They had to be. The speed of the data transfer, the way they were navigating the system, it all pointed to someone on the same local network, probably within the building, maybe even on the same floor. Maya's mind raced through the possibilities. Hotels had notoriously vulnerable Wi-Fi networks, even the expensive ones. Guests connected dozens of devices, each one a potential entry point for someone who knew what they were doing. But attacking someone's personal laptop through a hotel network required more than just skill. It required proximity, planning, and detailed knowledge of the target's schedule. This wasn't a random attack. Someone had known Sheikh Rahman would be here, in this room, at this time, conducting this specific business. Someone had prepared for this moment, positioned themselves nearby, and waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. "Excuse me," Maya heard herself say, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I might be able to help." 4 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and she realized with a jolt that they'd completely forgotten she was in the room. The sheikh stared at her with a mixture of confusion and desperation. "I'm sorry, what?" He blinked, trying to process her words. "You're the waitress." "Yes," Maya said, stepping closer to the table, despite every instinct telling her to back away, to remember her place. "But before I was a waitress, I worked in cybersecurity. I used to trace digital intrusions for a living, and I think I know how to find whoever is doing this." Omar looked at her skeptically, his phone still pressed to his ear. "With all due respect, this is a sophisticated corporate espionage operation. It requires specialized training and equipment. We need professionals." "I am a professional," Maya said, and for the first time in 2 years she heard the confidence of her old self in her voice. "Or at least, I was. And right now, I'm the only professional in this room who isn't panicking or waiting for someone in another time zone to call back. Every second we waste is another megabyte of data stolen. So you can either let me try, or you can watch everything you've worked for disappear while you're on hold with tech support." The room fell silent. Sheikh Rahman studied her face, searching for something. Trust, competence, hope. Then he gestured toward his laptop with a sharp, decisive movement. "Do it." Maya moved quickly to Sheikh Rahman's side, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The laptop screen glowed before her, a chaos of open windows and error messages. She could see the breach in progress, files being compressed and transferred at alarming speed. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for just a moment, and then muscle memory took over. It was like slipping into an old familiar jacket after years in storage. "I need your phone," she said to Omar, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "And I need you to tell me the hotel's Wi-Fi network name and any guest network names they use." Omar hesitated, glancing at the sheikh for confirmation. Sheikh Rahman nodded curtly. "Give her whatever she needs." While Omar unlocked his phone and handed it to her, Maya's fingers were already dancing across the laptop keyboard. She opened the command prompt, a black screen with white text that most people found intimidating, but that Maya navigated like a native language. Lines of code began scrolling past as she ran a network diagnostic. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, leaning forward to watch. His earlier skepticism had been replaced by cautious curiosity. "First, I'm identifying the point of intrusion," Maya explained, her eyes never leaving the screen. "The attacker is in the system, which means they created a pathway in. I need to find that pathway and follow it back to its source. Think of it like tracking footprints in fresh snow." Her fingers flew over the keys, typing commands faster than most people could read. The laptop's security software, which had been flashing warning messages uselessly, was bypassed as Maya dove deeper into the system's underlying architecture. She pulled up the network connection logs, scrolling through hundreds of entries, looking for the anomaly. "There," she muttered, highlighting a series of suspicious connection attempts. "Someone tried to connect to your laptop 17 times in the past 15 minutes before finally breaking through. They used a brute force attack on your Wi-Fi password, but that's just the first layer. They also exploited a vulnerability in the hotel's network infrastructure." David Brennan leaned in, his legal training making him ask the obvious question. "How do you know all this from just looking at code?" "Because I can see the signature of the attack," Maya said, pointing to a string of numbers and letters on the screen. "Every intrusion leaves traces, like a burglar leaving fingerprints. This particular pattern tells me the attacker is using sophisticated packet-sniffing software combined with a man-in-the-middle attack. They're intercepting the data flowing between your laptop and the hotel's router, then redirecting it to their own device." She grabbed Omar's phone and opened the Wi-Fi settings. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency as she navigated to advanced network options that most users never even knew existed. "I'm accessing the router's administrative interface." Hotels usually use default passwords for these, which is a security nightmare, but helpful for us right now. "Wait," Omar interjected, his technical knowledge sufficient to understand what she was attempting. "You're going to access the hotel's router. That's their private network infrastructure. Would you rather catch the thief or worry about network etiquette?" Maya shot back, already typing the most common default administrator passwords. On her third attempt, the router's control panel opened before her. "Got it." Sheikh Rahman watched her work with growing amazement. The panic that had consumed him moments ago was being replaced by cautious hope. "Can you stop the breach?" "I can do better than that," Maya said, her eyes scanning the router logs. "I can find whoever's doing this." The router's administrative panel displayed every device currently connected to the hotel's network. There were dozens: guests' phones, laptops, tablets, smart TVs in the rooms, even the hotel's own systems. But Maya knew what to look for. She filtered the results, isolating devices that had connected within the past hour and were currently transmitting large amounts of data. "Most of these devices are just people watching Netflix or checking email," she explained, her voice taking on the confident tone she'd once used when briefing clients at TechCore. "But this one..." She highlighted a specific MAC address. "This device is pulling massive amounts of data from a single source. Your laptop." Omar leaned over her shoulder, his earlier skepticism vanishing. "Can you identify the device?" "Who it belongs to?" "Working on it," Maya muttered. She cross-referenced the MAC address with the router's DHP logs, which tracked which devices had been assigned which IP addresses. The device shows up as a laptop. It's connected to the guest network, not the public Wi-Fi, which means whoever is using it has a room in the hotel. Marcus sat forward, his financial mind already calculating the implications. So we're looking for a hotel guest with a laptop who's physically in this building right now. Not just in the building, Maya said, her eyes narrowing as she studied the signal strength data. Based on the connection quality and signal strength, they're close, very close, probably within 100 feet of this room. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Sheikh Rahman stood up from his chair, his face hardening with anger. You're telling me that someone in this hotel, probably on this floor, is stealing my data right now, while we're sitting here? Yes, Maya confirmed, her fingers still flying across the keyboard. And if I can triangulate their exact location using the signal strength from multiple access points? She pulled up another screen, this one showing a rough map of the hotel's 42nd floor with several Wi-Fi access points marked. I might be able to tell you which room they're in. David Brennan pulled out his phone. I'm calling hotel security. If you can identify the room, we can have them arrested before they can escape. Wait, Maya said sharply, holding up a hand. If we spook them, they could destroy the evidence or encrypt it in a way we'll never recover. We need to be smart about this. Let me trace the signal strength first and confirm the location. She worked in silence for another 30 seconds, the only sound in the room the clicking of keys and the ragged breathing of 4 men watching their entire world hang in the balance. Then Maya's fingers stopped moving. She stared at the screen, her face going pale. What? Sheikh Rahman demanded. What did you find? Maya looked up at him, her eyes wide with realization. The signal isn't coming from a guest room. It's coming from right down the hall, conference room, 4207. For a moment, no one moved. The revelation that the attacker was literally feet away, separated only by walls and carpet, sent a chill through the room. Then Sheikh Rahman moved toward the door with sudden purpose, his face dark with fury. I'll handle this myself, he growled, reaching for the door handle. No! Maya said sharply, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. She stepped between the sheikh and the door, blocking his path. Think about what you're doing. If you storm in there, whoever it is will have time to destroy evidence, wipe drives, or escape through a service exit. We need to be strategic. Omar moved to the sheikh's side, placing a restraining hand on his employer's arm. She's right, Sheikh Rahman. We need to think this through. David Brennan was already on his phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to hotel security. Marcus had his laptop open, frantically sending messages to the banks to freeze all pending transactions. But Maya's mind was moving faster than all of them, calculating possibilities and outcomes like she used to during crisis situations at TechCore. How much time do we have? Sheikh Rahman demanded, forcing himself to step back from the door. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, the only outward sign of the rage and fear churning inside him. Maya glanced at the laptop screen, watching the data transfer continue in real time. They're downloading compressed files. Based on the transfer rate and the size of your database, I'd estimate they need another 5 to 7 minutes to get everything. But the moment they finish, they'll disconnect and disappear. We're working against the clock. Then we call security right now, Omar insisted. Have them surround the room and arrest whoever's inside. Hotel security will take too long to mobilize, Maya countered, her mind racing through scenarios. By the time they get personnel up here, organize themselves, and figure out what's happening, the attacker will be gone. And even if they move fast, a smart operative will have an exit strategy. They'll see security coming and bolt. Then what do you suggest? Sheikh Rahman asked, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. We can't just let them walk away with everything. Maya felt the weight of 4 pairs of eyes on her, waiting for her to produce a solution. The old fear tried to surface, The voice that had whispered she was just a waitress, just someone who served coffee and cleared plates, someone whose opinion didn't matter. But she pushed it down. She'd found the attacker when no one else could. She'd traced the intrusion in minutes, while experienced professionals were still on hold with tech support. This was what she was good at. This was who she'd been before life forced her into hiding. "I have an idea," she said slowly, the plan forming even as she spoke. "But I need everyone to trust me and move fast. Very fast." Sheikh Rahman studied her face, and in that moment, Maya saw him make a decision. He nodded once, sharply. "Tell us what to do." Maya grabbed Omar's phone again, her fingers flying across the screen. "First, I'm going to remotely trigger a network authentication request that will force the attacker's laptop to identify itself more specifically. It's a trick we used at my old job. Their computer will think it's a routine security check from the hotel, but it'll actually give me more detailed information about their hardware and software." She executed the command, watching the router's interface for a response. Seconds ticked by like hours. Then the information populated on screen. A Dell laptop, probably 3 years old, running specialized data extraction software that definitely wasn't standard consumer equipment. "Got it," Maya breathed. "Now I know exactly what device we're looking for. But here's the critical part. David, how long until hotel security can get someone to this floor?" David pulled the phone away from his ear. "They're sending 2 officers up now." "Maybe 3 minutes." "Not fast enough," Maya said. "By then, the transfer will be complete and they'll be gone. We need to act now. Here's what we're going to do. Omar, you're going to call the front desk and report a gas leak in conference room 4207. Tell them it's urgent, that you smell something dangerous, and they need to evacuate the room immediately." Omar's eyes widened. "You want to evacuate the attacker?" "That seems counterproductive." "No," Maya said, a fierce smile crossing her face. "I want to flush them out. When they evacuate, they'll have to come into the hallway. We'll be waiting. And here's the beautiful part. They won't be able to take their equipment with them. In an emergency evacuation, people don't stop to pack up laptops. They run, which means we'll catch them and secure the evidence." Marcus looked skeptical. "What if they do take the laptop? What if they're calm enough to grab it before evacuating?" "Then I'll identify them anyway," Maya said confidently. "Because I've been watching their device specifications. I know the exact make and model. Anyone coming out of that room carrying a 3-year-old Dell laptop with a distinctive custom configuration is our thief. Either way, we win." Sheikh Rahman's face broke into a grim smile. "It's a good plan. Do it." Omar was already dialing the front desk, his voice taking on an edge of panic that sounded entirely convincing. "Yes, hello, this is Omar Hassan from conference room 4203. I'm in the hallway and I smell gas. Strong gas smell coming from room 4207. You need to send someone up here immediately and evacuate that room. This could be dangerous." Maya could hear the alarm in the desk clerk's voice, even through the phone, asking questions, trying to assess the situation. Omar played his part perfectly, insisting that they needed to act now, that people could be in danger. Within 30 seconds, the hotel's emergency protocols kicked into gear. "They're sending maintenance and security up now," Omar said, ending the call, "and they're going to trigger the evacuation alarm for this floor." "Perfect," Maya said. She moved to the door and cracked it open slightly, positioning herself to see down the hallway toward conference room 4207. "Everyone stay back from the door except me. I need to see who comes out of that room." The 4 men positioned themselves behind her, out of sight but ready to move. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched the empty hallway. Somewhere in the building, alarms would be sounding. Hotel staff would be mobilizing. Security would be rushing to this floor. And in conference room 4207, a corporate spy was about to have their worst day. 30 seconds passed, then 45. Then Maya heard it. Footsteps in the hallway, rapid and purposeful. A figure appeared from around the corner, heading straight for room 4207. "Security's coming," Maya whispered. The door to conference room 4207 opened, and Maya's eyes locked onto the figure emerging into the hallway. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a man in his mid-30s, dressed in an expensive navy suit that screamed corporate professional. He had sandy brown hair, styled perfectly, wire-rimmed glasses, and carried a leather briefcase in one hand. But no laptop. Maya's eyes swept over him quickly, cataloguing details the way she'd been trained. No visible bulge in his jacket that would suggest a concealed laptop. The briefcase looked slim, probably containing papers and maybe a tablet, but not a full-sized computer. He was leaving the equipment behind, just as she'd predicted. The man's face showed mild annoyance rather than panic, the expression of someone inconvenienced by a false alarm rather than someone fleeing a crime scene. He was good, very good. If Maya hadn't known what to look for, she might have mistaken him for just another businessman caught up in an unfortunate hotel emergency. But she knew better. Hotel security appeared from the elevator bay, two officers in crisp uniforms moving quickly down the hallway. Behind them came a maintenance worker carrying what looked like a gas detection device. The man in the navy suit saw them coming and adjusted his path slightly, moving toward the elevator as though intending to evacuate the floor like any responsible guest would. "That's him," Maya whispered urgently over her shoulder. "The one in the navy suit with the briefcase. We need to stop him before he reaches the elevator." Sheikh Rahman moved to push past her, but Maya held up a hand. "Wait. Let me handle this. If we all rush him, he might run or cause a scene. Let me approach him first. He doesn't know who I am or what I know." Before anyone could object, Maya stepped fully into the hallway, letting the conference room door close behind her. She walked quickly, but not frantically, toward the man, positioning herself to intercept him before he reached the elevator. Her heart hammered, but years of service work had taught her how to control her body language, how to appear calm and professional, even when everything inside her was screaming. "Excuse me, sir," Maya called out, her voice carrying the practiced pleasantness of hotel staff. "I'm terribly sorry about the inconvenience. Could you wait here for just a moment? We need to account for everyone who was on the floor." The man stopped, turning to face her with a polite but slightly impatient smile. Up close, Maya could see the telltale signs of tension, a slight tightness around his eyes, the way his hand gripped the briefcase handle just a bit too firmly, the barely perceptible increase in his breathing rate. He was rattled, but hiding it well. "Of course," he said smoothly, his voice carrying a neutral American accent. "Is there really a gas leak?" "I didn't smell anything." "We're investigating it now," Maya said, stepping closer to him. Behind her, she could hear the conference room door opening as Sheikh Rahman and his team emerged. The man's eyes flicked past her, registering the group of men, and something changed in his expression. Just for a fraction of a second, she saw calculation flash across his face. He knew that he'd been caught. "Actually," the man said, taking a step back, "I really need to get to an important meeting downstairs. I'm sure you understand. I'll evacuate via the stairs." He turned toward the emergency stairwell exit, moving with sudden purpose. But Maya was faster. She'd anticipated this exact move. She positioned herself between him and the stairs, blocking his path. "I'm afraid I need you to stay here, sir," Maya said, her voice hardening. "You see, there's been a cybersecurity incident, and I have reason to believe you're involved." The man's pleasant facade cracked completely. His face went from polite to cold in an instant, and Maya saw the real person underneath the corporate disguise. This was someone dangerous, someone who'd done this before, someone who didn't appreciate being cornered by a hotel waitress. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said icily. "I'm a guest at this hotel, and you're harassing me based on what exactly? Some kind of vague suspicion?" "I don't think so. Now move aside, or I'll file a complaint with management." Sheikh Rahman stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "You can file whatever you want, but you're not leaving this floor until we figure out why your laptop was used to hack into my computer and steal confidential information." The man's eyes darted between Maya, the sheikh, and the approaching security officers. Maya could see him weighing his options, calculating whether he could talk his way out or if he needed to run. His hand shifted on the briefcase handle, and Maya suddenly wondered if it contained more than just papers. "Security!" David Brennan called out, waving the officers over. "This man is suspected of corporate espionage. We need you to detain him while we investigate." The security officers looked uncertain, caught between a wealthy guest's serious accusation and not wanting to illegally detain someone. The taller of the two officers stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us and answer some questions." "I'm not going anywhere," the man snapped, his composure finally breaking. "You have no authority to detain me. I haven't done anything wrong. This is harassment, pure and simple, and I'll see that all of you regret this." Maya pulled out Omar's phone, which still displayed the router logs. "Then explain this," she said, turning the screen toward him. "This is the MAC address of a laptop that was used to hack Sheikh Rahman's computer 15 minutes ago. That laptop is currently connected to the hotel network and transmitting from conference room 4207, the same room you just exited. Care to tell us who else was in there with you?" The man's face went pale, then flushed red with anger. For a moment, Maya thought he might actually lunge at her. But then something else happened. His expression shifted to one of cold calculation, and he smiled. Not a friendly smile, a dangerous one. "You think you're clever," he said quietly, speaking directly to Maya now. "But you have no idea who you're dealing with or what you've just walked into." Before Maya could respond, the maintenance worker approached from behind the security officers. "We checked room 4207, he announced, looking confused. "There's no gas leak. Sensors are reading normal. But the door was open, and we found electronic equipment inside. Laptop, some kind of antenna array, cables everywhere. Looked like a surveillance setup." The man in the navy suit's face went from red to ashen in seconds. The physical evidence was now confirmed. There was no more room for denial or deception. He'd been caught, and everyone in that hallway knew it. "That laptop," Maya said firmly, addressing the security officers, "contains evidence of a cybercrime in progress. It needs to be secured immediately before it can be remotely wiped. Can one of you go back to that room right now and make sure no one touches it?" The taller officer nodded and jogged back toward conference room 4207. The second officer pulled out handcuffs, his demeanor shifting from uncertain to professional. "Sir, I'm placing you in temporary detention while we investigate this matter. You have the right to remain silent." "This is a mistake," the man interrupted, but his voice had lost its edge. "You're all making a terrible mistake. The people I work for don't take kindly to interference. Sheikh Rahman, you should walk away from this right now. Forget what happened here today. There are bigger forces at play than you understand." Sheikh Rahman's eyes blazed with fury. "Bigger forces? You tried to destroy years of humanitarian work. You attempted to steal donor information that could put lives at risk. And you think I'm going to walk away because you make vague threats?" Omar stepped forward, his phone out and recording. "For the record, can you state your name and who you're working for?" The man pressed his lips together and said nothing. The second security officer began patting him down for weapons, finding only a phone, wallet, and room key. But when he reached for the briefcase, the man jerked it away violently. "That's private property. You can't search it without a warrant." Actually, David Brennan interjected, his attorney's voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Given that we have reasonable suspicion of a crime in progress and the immediate need to preserve evidence, exigent circumstances apply. Officer, you're authorized to secure that briefcase as potential evidence. The security officer took the briefcase despite the man's protests and set it on a nearby hall table. When he opened it, everyone leaned in to see the contents. Inside were papers, a tablet, and 3 USB drives. But there was also something else. A small device no bigger than a pack of cards with blinking lights. That's a cellular hotspot, Maya identified immediately. He was planning to use it to upload the stolen data once he was away from the hotel network, probably to a cloud server or directly to his employers. If he'd made it to the elevator and gotten outside, all the data would have been transmitted wirelessly within minutes. Sheikh Rahman looked at Maya with newfound respect and something else, gratitude mixed with amazement. You stopped him. You actually stopped him. Not yet, Maya said, her mind already moving to the next critical step. We've caught him, but the data breach is still in progress. That laptop in the conference room is still connected to your computer, still copying files. I need to get back to your laptop and sever the connection properly, then ensure nothing was transmitted that we can't recover. The detained man laughed bitterly. Too late. The data's already been uploaded to a secure server. You can stop the connection, but you can't stop what's already been done. My employers have everything they need. Maya felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to remain calm. Omar, how long has the breach been active since you first noticed it? About 18 minutes, Omar replied, checking his watch. And you said the full database would take how long to transfer completely? Sheikh Rahman asked Maya urgently. I estimated 20 to 25 minutes for a complete download, Maya said, thinking quickly. Which means if we can cut the connection in the next few minutes, there's still a portion of the data that hasn't been compromised. It's not perfect, but it's better than losing everything. She turned to the security officer holding the suspect. Take him to your office and hold him there. Don't let him near any electronic devices. His phone might have remote access capabilities. Put it in a Faraday bag if you have one, or at minimum, power it off and remove the battery. The officer looked impressed. You've done this before. Doomed more times than I'd like to count, Maya admitted. Then she turned and ran back toward conference room 4203, with Sheikh Rahman, Omar, David and Marcus right behind her. They burst into the conference room to find the laptop still open, still displaying the ongoing data transfer. Maya's hands flew across the keyboard, executing commands to identify exactly which files had been compromised and which were still secure. Talk to me, Sheikh Rahman said, standing behind her, his hands gripping the back of her chair. How bad is it? Maya's eyes scanned the transfer logs, her heart sinking as she saw the scope of what had been taken. He got the donor database, all of it, names, contact information, donation amounts, banking details for wire transfers. He also got architectural plans for the hospital projects and correspondence with several government officials. The room fell silent, except for the clicking of Maya's fingers on the keyboard. Then she found something that made her pause. Wait a second. He got the files, but... She pulled up the network logs, cross-referencing them with the timestamps on the stolen files. He didn't upload them. The files were compressed and staged for upload, but the upload never initiated. The cellular hotspot in his briefcase wasn't activated yet. Omar leaned over her shoulder. Why wouldn't he have uploaded immediately? Because, Maya said slowly, a smile spreading across her face. He was confident he wouldn't be caught. He was going to walk out of here, get to a safe location, and then trigger the upload remotely. He wanted to be far away from the scene when the data hit his employer's servers. Sheikh Rahman exhaled deeply, a sound of profound relief. So the data never left the hotel? The data never left that laptop in conference room 4207, Maya confirmed. Maya severed the connection between Sheikh Rahman's laptop and the attacker's device with a few keystrokes, then initiated a security lockdown on the network. The green progress bar that had been steadily draining Sheikh Rahman's digital life froze at 73%, then disappeared entirely. "It's done," she said, leaning back in the chair. Her hands were trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was beginning to fade. The breach is contained. Nothing was transmitted externally. All the stolen data is still on that laptop down the hall, and nowhere else. Sheikh Rahman placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle for a man who commanded so much power. "You just saved years of my life's work. I don't have adequate words to thank you." Before Maya could respond, the door opened and the taller security officer returned, slightly out of breath. "We've secured the equipment from the other conference room and contacted the NYPD. They're sending a cybercrime unit. Should be here within the hour. The suspect is being held in our security office and he's demanding to speak with his attorney." "Let him make one phone call," David Brennan said, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. "We need to do this by the book. If we violate his rights, any evidence we've gathered could be thrown out, but make sure that call is monitored and recorded." Omar was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in Arabic to someone on the other end. When he finished, he looked at the sheikh with concern. "I've contacted our security consultants in Dubai. They're recommending we change all passwords immediately, conduct a full security audit, and consider postponing any financial transfers for 72 hours until we can be certain no other vulnerabilities exist." "Agreed," Sheikh Rahman said. "Make it happen. And Omar, I want you to work with Maya on this. She clearly knows what she's doing better than the expensive consultants we've been paying." Maya blinked, surprised. "Sheikh Rahman, I'm just a waitress. You're not just anything," the sheikh interrupted firmly. "You're the woman who single-handedly traced and stopped a sophisticated corporate espionage operation in under 3 minutes. I've seen military intelligence officers who couldn't have done what you just did." Marcus Chen had been quiet for several minutes, but now he spoke up, his eyes thoughtful as he studied Maya. "I'm curious about something. How did you recognize the intrusion pattern so quickly? Most people, even IT professionals, would have needed specialized software and more time to identify the attack signature." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. "At my old job, Tech Core Solutions, we specialized in rapid response to data breaches. We had clients in finance, healthcare, government contracting. When someone got hacked, they called us, and we had to move fast. I probably analyzed 3 or 4 major breaches every week for 2 years. You start to recognize patterns. This particular attack had the fingerprints of corporate espionage written all over it, the timing, the target selection, the methodology." "Tech Core Solutions," David Brennan repeated, pulling out his phone and typing. "I've heard of them. They consulted on a case I worked on 3 years ago. Very reputable firm." He looked up at Maya with new interest. "Why did you leave?" Maya hesitated, the old pain surfacing. She'd gotten so good at avoiding this conversation, at deflecting questions about her past. But these men had trusted her in their moment of crisis. They deserved honesty. "My mother got sick," she said quietly. "Cancer. I had to leave to take care of her. By the time she passed away, I'd been out of the industry too long. The tech world moves fast. An 18-month gap on your resume might as well be a decade. No one would hire me, so I took what I could get." The room fell silent, heavy with understanding. Sheikh Rahman's expression softened, and Maya saw something in his eyes that looked almost like recognition, as though her story resonated with something in his own past. "I lost my mother to inadequate medical care," he said softly. It's why I started this humanitarian foundation. Why I'm building hospitals in places where people die from treatable conditions because they're too poor or too far from help. I understand the cost of caring for someone you love. Omar cleared his throat, breaking the emotional moment. Sheikh, we should probably discuss what happens next. The police will want statements from all of us, and we need to figure out who hired that man and why they targeted you specifically. Already working on it, Marcus said, his fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. I've been pulling up records. The room where the attack originated was booked under the name Robert Chen, supposedly a business consultant from Seattle. But I ran the credit card through our fraud detection system. It's a corporate account registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. So we're dealing with professionals, David observed grimly. This wasn't some opportunistic hacker. This was a coordinated operation with serious funding behind it. Maya's mind was already racing ahead, connecting dots. Sheikh Rahman, can I ask you something? Do you have any competitors in the humanitarian space? Other organizations or individuals who might benefit from your hospital projects failing? The Sheikh's face darkened. There are always rivals in business, even in philanthropy, but to hire someone to steal confidential donor information, that's not competition. That's sabotage. Unless, Omar interjected slowly, they weren't trying to sabotage the hospitals. What if they were after something specific in your donor database? Someone who donated to your cause that they wanted to identify? The implications hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. If someone was targeting Sheikh Rahman's donors, it meant this was about more than just business rivalry. It could be political, maybe even dangerous. The police will sort it out, David said firmly. The NYPD cybercrime unit arrived exactly 53 minutes later. 2 detectives and a digital forensics specialist swept into the hotel with the kind of efficient professionalism that made Maya feel oddly nostalgic for her old life. She watched them work, documenting the scene in conference room 4207, carefully bagging the laptop and associated equipment, photographing everything from multiple angles. Detective Sarah Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with greying hair, pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, took Maya's statement personally. She listened intently as Maya walked her through the technical details of how she'd traced the intrusion, occasionally nodding in approval or asking clarifying questions that showed she actually understood the technology. "You did good work here," Detective Morrison said when Maya finished. "Most civilians would have panicked or tried to shut everything down, which would have destroyed evidence. You kept your head and followed proper protocols. You ever think about working in law enforcement?" Maya gave a tired laugh. "At this point, I'd consider just about anything that pays better than waiting tables." The detective handed Maya her card. "I'm serious. We're always looking for people with your skill set. Think about it." Over the next 2 hours, the hotel transformed into a crime scene. The detained suspect, who finally identified himself as Robert Chen, though that was almost certainly an alias, was taken into custody and transported to police headquarters. His laptop and equipment were seized as evidence. The USB drives in his briefcase were preliminarily examined and found to contain sophisticated data extraction tools that required specialized training to use. Throughout it all, Sheikh Rahman remained calm and composed, answering the detectives' questions with diplomatic precision, while Omar handled the coordination with their own security teams and legal advisors. David Brennan was in his element, ensuring that everything was documented properly and that his clients' interests were protected. Marcus worked quietly in the corner, implementing additional security measures and changing access codes. And Maya stood to the side, feeling increasingly like she'd stepped into someone else's life. This morning, she'd woken up expecting another ordinary day of serving coffee and clearing plates. Now she was at the center of an international corporate espionage investigation, being thanked by detectives and treated like a colleague by men who moved millions of dollars with a signature. It was overwhelming and surreal, and strangely exhilarating all at once. Finally, around 2 in the afternoon, the police wrapped up their initial investigation and cleared the scene. The conference room was returned to the hotel, though it would probably be weeks before the legal proceedings were fully complete. Detective Morrison promised to keep them updated on the investigation's progress and left with her team, taking Robert Chen and all the evidence with them. When the door finally closed behind the last detective, leaving just Sheikh Rahman, Omar, David, Marcus and Maya in the conference room, an exhausted silence fell over the group. They'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and now that the immediate crisis was over, the weight of what had almost happened began to settle in. Sheikh Rahman moved to the windows, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful and measured. "Maya, would you sit down for a moment? I'd like to speak with you about something important." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she took a seat at the conference table. The 3 other men remained standing, forming a loose semicircle around them. Whatever was coming, it felt significant. "You saved something precious today," the sheikh began, turning to face her. "Not just data or money, though both of those matter. You saved the trust of hundreds of donors who believed in this mission, who gave their resources to help people they'll never meet in places they'll never visit. If that information had been compromised, it would have destroyed not just this project, but potentially years of future humanitarian work." Maya nodded, unsure where this was going. "I'm glad I could help, Sheikh Rahman." "Really? But I was just doing what anyone with my training would have done." "That's where you're wrong," Omar interjected gently. "Most people with your training wouldn't have been here. They wouldn't have been serving coffee in the first place. And even if they were, most wouldn't have spoken up, wouldn't have risked looking foolish by claiming they could solve a problem that was above their station." "You took a risk today," David added. "You put yourself out there knowing you might fail, knowing we might dismiss you or think you were crazy. That takes courage." Sheikh Rahman moved closer to the table, his expression serious. "Maya, I'm going to be direct, because that's how I do business. I need someone like you on my team, not as a consultant or a contractor, but as a permanent part of my organization. I want to offer you a position as Director of Cybersecurity for the Rahman Foundation." Maya's mouth went dry. She stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? "We operate globally," the sheikh continued. "We manage hundreds of millions of dollars, coordinate with governments and NGOs, and handle extremely sensitive information. After today, it's clear that we need someone dedicated to protecting our digital infrastructure, someone smart, capable, and trustworthy. That's you." "But I've been out of the field for 2 years," Maya protested weakly. "My skills might be outdated. I don't have current certifications or—" "Skills can be updated," Sheikh Rahman interrupted. "Certifications can be obtained. What you have is something more valuable: instinct, quick thinking, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Those qualities can't be taught." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them back quickly. "Sheikh Rahman, I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous, but it's also overwhelming. A few hours ago I was serving you coffee. Now you're offering me a position that could change my entire life." "That's exactly what I'm offering," the sheikh said with a slight smile. "A chance to change your life, to use your gifts for something meaningful, and to be compensated fairly for your expertise. The salary would be $200,000 annually, plus benefits, with performance bonuses tied to the foundation's security metrics. You'd be based here in New York, but would travel internationally as needed to oversee security for our operations." The number hit Maya like a physical force: $200,000. That was more than quadruple what she'd made at TechCore, more than she'd ever imagined earning. It was enough to pay off her mother's medical debts completely, enough to rebuild her savings, enough to finally breathe without constantly calculating whether she could afford groceries and rent in the same week. "I need you to understand something," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm not the person I was 2 years ago. I've been beaten down by life. There have been days when I could barely get out of bed because I was so overwhelmed by everything I'd lost. I'm not sure I'm the strong, confident person you think you're hiring." Sheikh Rahman pulled out a chair and sat across from her, his expression compassionate. "Maya, do you know why I started this foundation? After my mother died, I spent 3 years doing nothing but making money. I built my business empire, acquired companies, became exactly what the world told me to be: successful, wealthy, powerful. And I was miserable. Then one day, I was in a village outside Damascus, where my mother grew up, and I saw a little girl die because there was no doctor within 50 miles. She was 7 years old, the same age my mother had been when she left that village." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "That moment broke something in me and rebuilt it differently. I realized that success wasn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you give back, what you build that outlasts you. You've been through tremendous loss and hardship, Maya. That didn't make you weak. It made you resilient. It gave you perspective. And today, when it mattered most, you didn't hesitate to use your gifts to help others. That's exactly who I want on my team." Maya looked around the conference room at the 4 men who were watching her with encouraging expressions. Omar nodded at her slightly. David gave her a subtle thumbs up. Marcus smiled warmly. These strangers had witnessed her at what should have been her most vulnerable moment and had seen strength instead of weakness. She thought about her mother, about those final conversations they'd had when the pain medication made her philosophical and reflective. Her mother had told her that setbacks were just setups for comebacks, that the universe had a funny way of preparing you for opportunities by first putting you through trials. At the time, Maya had dismissed it as the hopeful delusions of someone facing death, but maybe her mother had been right all along. "Yes," Maya heard herself say, the word coming out stronger than she expected. "Yes, I accept your offer. I'd be honored to work for the Rahman Foundation." Sheikh Rahman's face broke into a genuine smile, and he extended his hand across the table. Maya shook it firmly, feeling the calloused strength of someone who worked for what he'd built. In that handshake, she felt the transfer of trust, of opportunity, of a second chance she'd thought was lost forever. Omar immediately pulled out his tablet. "I'll have HR draw up the employment contracts today. Maya, can you start next Monday? That gives you a week to resign from the hotel and get your affairs in order." "Monday," Maya agreed, hardly believing the words coming out of her mouth. "I'll be ready." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of logistics and planning. Contact information was exchanged. Email addresses were set up. David walked her through the employment contract terms, ensuring she understood every clause. Marcus outlined the technology infrastructure she'd be responsible for securing. Omar discussed travel schedules and team dynamics. Through it all, Maya felt like she was watching herself from outside her body, observing someone else being given this incredible opportunity. But gradually, as the reality settled in, she began to feel something she hadn't felt in 2 years: hope, purpose, excitement about the future instead of dread. When Maya finally left the Grandview Hotel that evening, she walked out through the employee entrance one last time. Tomorrow, she would resign from her waitressing position. Next week, she would begin a career that aligned with her skills and passions. But tonight, she wanted to savor this moment, this pivot point where her entire life had changed direction in the span of 3 extraordinary minutes. She pulled out her phone and looked at the lock screen, a photo of her mother taken during one of her better days near the end. "We did it, Mom," Maya whispered. "We took the long way around, but we made it." And for the first time since her mother's death, Maya Chen felt truly, completely whole.